Good morning, class. Good morning, guys. I hope you guys had as best of a spring break as you possibly could. Just know that Miss Howard really does miss you guys, and I'm here for you. Whatever you might need, just let me know. All right. Again, good morning, and let's get started because we always have a lot to do. But before we get started, I want you guys to do morning circle. Show mom, dad, cousin, grandma, whoever's at home with you. Show them how we do morning circle. So I want you to pause the video just for a little bit, maybe for like 5 to 10 minutes. Pause the video and do morning circle. Now, the purpose of morning circle is for you to greet the people in your classroom, get to talking, get to moving, get you ready to work for the day. So usually what we do, first we start off with saying good morning to a partner. You can do a handshake, a hug. Then you ask them, how are you feeling? Once you ask them how you're feeling, then we go on with a question. Like your question could simply be something as, hey, what's your favorite food? And once they tell you, you can say, well, why is that your favorite food? And then it gets you guys talking about favorite food and if it's alike, if it's different. After you finish answering a question for that day, then you do some type of activity. Sometimes it could be telephone, where one person says a word and it keeps going around, and then the last person has to say the word out loud to see if the word is still the same. And it also is teaching them that sometimes when you say things, different things can be said, and it's not always true. We also play a game called Zoom, where you stand in a circle and you just simply pass the Zoom. We have other games where it's called This is a What. So it will go, this is a what, a marker, a what, a marker, oh, a marker. We also have games where they're playing I Spy. And then once we finish with our game, we usually go right into some type of exercise, whether it's like a quick jump jack, a push up, or something like that. So that's what we usually do for Morning Circle. All right, pause the video and go ahead and enjoy Morning Circle. Welcome back. All right, so what we usually do in the morning time, right after morning circle, is we usually start with our writing. Now, I know that I did post a schedule on here, and you are more than welcome to follow that schedule. However, I'm also going to give you the classroom schedule on this video as to how I usually follow things. So this is going to be backwards. This is the Kinder's one, but don't worry about it being backwards because I am going to post this paper so everyone can see it. Excuse the handwriting. If you can't understand something, you can always ask me. But for Kinder writing, every day they'll write about how they feel and then they'll explain it. So what we're working on in Kinder 2 is whenever they're writing, their picture needs to match their story. So for instance, if they're writing about how they feel and they feel really, really angry that morning, but they draw a picture of them smiling, then that means that your picture and word don't match, which means that it does not make a complete story, or it doesn't make the story make sense. So we're talking about how to create a story that makes sense in writing. So basically they'll write about how they feel and why they feel that way. It's just basically journaling for them, why they feel that way, and then they need to draw about it. And they need to make sure they're putting in their setting. They need to make sure they need to make sure they're drawing why they feel that way. So for example, it could simply be, this morning I woke up sleepy. And then they could write, I feel sleepy because I stayed up last night playing my video games. And then on the picture, they could just simply draw them looking really sleepy as they're trying to write. Something like that. It's simple, but yet it's still getting their minds rotating and going and being able to figure out how to create a story. All right. Sorry about that. Now we have, for first grade, they'll be writing a personal narrative about their break. So a personal narrative is just simply them writing about themselves and what happened. So what they'll do is they'll write about that each day, and they'll add details. So for instance, they might start out the first day, because I know, sometimes writing isn't like the best thing, but it's something that needs to be done because it only helps build their abilities. For instance, for the first day, they could say, on spring break, I play video games. Okay. And then they can explain, well, I played, Madden, and I played the NBA game, or I played hockey, or something like that. And then, like, if they had fun, and then the next day could then say, well, I played it with my cousin. We had fun. We played for this time. We were sitting in the living room. But, they're just simply adding details to make their story a little bit more fuller and to make it to where if someone's reading it, they feel like they're there. So they were just basically writing a personal narrative and adding details. They'll be editing, revising. I'm not really using the words editing and revising. That's the reason I just keep saying add details. But that's what they're doing. All right. Next, from writing, we usually go right into phonics. Now, phonics is basically their sight words. You can go to YouTube and click Jack Hartman for sight words, or you can Google a list of sight words for Kinder and first grade and just go over the sight words with them. The sight words, they need to do the sight words because it helps them when they're reading. It helps them pick up this pace a little bit. So it's like, if they can recognize their word automatically, then they're able to read it more fluently and understand it. So yeah, you can get the sight words offline. Also for if they have their homework journals, especially in kinder, what they can do is they can simply go through and look at those sight words in there, and they can just read off those sight words. You can also review the homework with them again as well. After we finish with phonics, we usually go right into centers. Now, center time, you don't necessarily have to do that part. It's just usually them working by themselves in a group. That is completely up to you. Usually what I'm doing during center is I'm working with the kids, like maybe 2 and 3 at a time. So that way I can see where they are and what they understand and what I need to go over with them. So basically at this time, you can go over something that you think they're really struggling with, and that would help them. After center time, we usually go right into reading. Now, reading usually takes a little bit longer, simply because of what they're expected to do. So I didn't actually put a story on here. It is up to you if you want to put a story. However, it's simply up to you what story you want to read, which is why I didn't pick a story. It depends on what books you have. But I'm going to use, I didn't even put it in here, but I do have a template. I'm going to use the Three Little Pigs as an example for they'll be going over story element. That's the skill they're going to be working on. Story element for the whole week. So basically, whenever you're reading to them, make sure you're going over the story elements, like what's your title, who are your characters, what's your setting, what's your plot, what's your conflict, and what's your resolution. Again, I am going to take pictures of these and post these on there so you can also have access to these. So for instance, I also have this paper here. It tells you like what you're to look for in each story element. Here you go. It tells you what to look for in each story element. So it says, who is in your story? That's your main character. It says, when and where did your story happen? That's your setting. Make sure you're using these questions with them as you're going over it, so they're hearing that vocabulary and they're hearing the words that they need to hear to understand what's going on and to help with comprehension as well. Then the plot. The plot is the beginning, middle, and end. So they need to hear the words plot, and they need to understand that it's beginning, middle, and end. We go over this in class, but sometimes we go over so much stuff that sometimes it's lost. But if you get them started, like, so what's your plot? It goes beginning, and they'll be able to tell you, oh, middle and end, and they need to know what happens in the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. Now, usually what we do is we'll do like little boxes, like 3 little boxes, and they can draw the pictures beginning, middle, and end. Some of them prefer to write, and that's okay too. And then they will go over what is the conflict. The conflict is what was the problem in the story, and then what did they do to solve it, which would be your resolution. We use conflict and resolution whenever we're talking about story elements to help. Always, whenever we're going over a book, we always make sure we write our title, because if someone wants to come and look at this and they want to read the book, they won't know what book it is if you don't put your title. So on this paper here, if we were doing the 3 Little Pigs, first thing they would write, their title. Characters, they would write the 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. Setting would be, depending on which version you read, the version we read at school, the setting would be outside. Or we can say in the Three Little Pigs house. So it could be in the forest and in the Three Little Pigs house. It also could be when. This story always takes place during the daytime. And judging by how the Three Little Pigs are dressed, we could say it was either summer or springtime. Also, the plot, what happens in the beginning of your story, the Three Little Pigs each have to build their own house, and they get materials from different people. In the middle of the story, the big bad wolf blows down the houses of the first and second little pig. And at the end of the story, they run to the big brother pig house, and the wolf tries to blow it down, and he doesn't. And in some versions, which the kids like this version, they boil water, and the wolf comes down the chimney, and he shoots back out because the water is burning him. Also, if you do not have books, you can YouTube books for them to listen to and or watch, and also fill out this information. I understand, like, sometimes we don't have all these resources that I'm saying for. You can use notebook paper. It doesn't have to be straight white paper. There's also paper that I sent with them. Not everybody got the same paper, which is why I'm doing it this way, just so you can see that you can also create your own. That's story element for reading. And then after that, we usually go back. We usually go to social studies. Now, social studies, it's quite simple. It's just kind of like a research thing that I have them doing. So what I want them to do is pick someone important in their life. It could be a family member, a celebrity, a famous activist, a president. As long as it's someone important to them. I want them to, if it's a family member, it'd be even better because they get a chance to interview that person, talk to that person, ask them questions. And then I want them to just simply make a little book. All they have to do is take some paper, cut it in half, fold it, and make a little book. Just a simple little book about that person. Now, I mean, granted, it might be pictures, but just each day, maybe find something on that person. Like the first day, I don't expect them to actually write anything. I just want them to learn about the person that they picked. And figure out. So for instance, I picked my Aunt Mag. Now, granted, I grew up with her all my life, so I don't necessarily have to go and get the information. I already know a lot of it. However, I want them to be able to, say for instance, if the person they pick is Jackie Robinson, which I know one of my kiddos really loves Jackie Robinson, they can go and they can look up stuff about him. Like his number is 42. His number 42 is retired. He was a baseball player. He also was in the army. Like, they can go and they can look that type of stuff up, and then they can create their book and they can put it in there. They can draw the pictures and they can tell you about it. They get really excited about stuff like this because it gives them a chance to explore for themselves. And then of course, lunchtime and specials and all that. And then in math for first grade, they are going to be going on over time. So they should be going over the minute hand, the hour hand. They should be talking about digital and analog. And also there are really great videos on YouTube for them. For example, Jack Hartman does really good videos. Like, that's a great resource. Like, just about everything I'm talking about here, you could literally put it on YouTube and say 3D shapes Jack Hartman, and it's going to be a video popped up. You can pop up. You can say working on time Jack Hartman, and it's going to pop up. Living and non-living, social studies. You can be able to you'll be able to YouTube a lot of this stuff and get a lot of great resources from there. People like Jack Hartman and Fun Learning. Those are two people. Those are two of the things I know on YouTube are good. Like for exercises and brain break, Go Noodle. Like if you YouTube Go Noodle, you'll be able to find really great stuff for that as well. For Kinder, we are going to be working on 3D shapes. Now, they will do a shape a day. Now, for the cube, I would spend 2 days because it's so many sides and I want them to be able to draw. So my suggestion is go over the shape, go over the attributes, meaning go over how would you describe this shape. For instance, the cone has one point, one vertex, it's curved, and it has a flat bottom. And then, you can let them watch on YouTube how to create a cone, and then have them search around the house for things that are cones, and maybe even make a little journal and draw things that are cones in the house, like an ice cream cone or, something of that sort. The same with the spear, the cube, and the cylinder. You can, again, get on YouTube and find all of this stuff. Jack Hartman, again, is a great resource for that. And again, have them go on a hunt to see if they can find these different 3D shapes in the house. That's for math. And then I've already said, like, for music, PE, and recess, Go Noodle. Go Noodle is like a really good site for them. And then after that, we have social studies. So for not social studies, I'm sorry, science. So for science, we're going to be talking about living and non-living things. We've been reviewing that a while, so they should be able to know what that is. We're going to be talking about what do living things need. So like living things need water, air, sun, food to move, to grow, to reproduce, and shelter. And there's other things that they'll name off. But we're going to be talking about things that are living. They'll draw on this T-chart things that are living and non-living. And then they'll tell you, they'll have to draw what will living things need and what will living things need. Like you can put this question on a paper like this and then just have them draw all the things that living things will need. And then have them, they can either draw it or they can verbally tell you. How can you tell the difference between something that is living and non-living? So for instance, like this marker versus a plant. How would you be able to tell me that this marker isn't living and how is this plant living? So for example, again, this flower, I said plant, this flower and this marker. Well, this marker doesn't need anything to grow. It can't reproduce. It doesn't need water, air, sun, or food. So I could just about say that this is what? Non-living. The only way it moves is if I'm moving it myself. How can I tell that this is living? Well, first off, I could tell that it's growing. If you look down here, you'll see water dropping. It needs water to grow. It needs air. It doesn't necessarily, well, if you look here, it grows its own, it makes its own food. So therefore it can reproduce by itself. It doesn't necessarily need something else. It moves when it grows. It needs, it makes its own food, and it also needs a shelter from harsh weather. So that tells me that this is living. So, they can just simply go around the house and pick up things and say, this is not living, and they can tell you why you might be living and not living. Make an environment to where they would love to do it. All right. So you can do these things little by little each day. Like for instance, when I was saying with the reading, you can just go over characters one day. Like who are the main characters in your story one day. And then the next day, maybe go over the plot. And then the next day, maybe go over the setting. And then the next day, the problem and the conflict and the resolution. You go at your own pace. I am thinking about how I do it in the classroom, which will be completely different when it's your child one-on-one. Do what is comfortable for you. All right. You guys have an excellent day. Thank you for tuning in.